Hello, RWorld, and welcome back to RWorldTalk. Very excited to have Ms. Courtney Kahn on our episode here this morning. Courtney, you've been on staff for about a year. It's been great to have you in our corner. So over the past year, what have you learned about the real estate industry?
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me here. I'm excited. This is my first time doing a podcast. So
You're going to be fantastic.
very exciting. Good question. There is so much that I have learned over the past year. So where should I start, or how much time do we have, I guess?
We've got some time.
Good. Okay. Well, I would say the first thing that I think is really unique to this industry is all of the wide variety of legal issues that realtors face. And, off the top of my head, they have to know fair housing laws and contract law, RESPA, antitrust, copyright. The list goes on and on. So there's a lot of legal issues and, no shortage of legal issues, that's for sure.
We do have a ton of legal issues. I actually just called the Florida Realtors legal hotline on the way here this morning because I didn't want to bother you. But yeah, we had all the time. We've got all these different things that come up, and having someone like you in our corner is absolutely fantastic, especially when we come up with things like just this morning, it was a question about emotional support animals. And it's one of those things that, the law just changed last year. So trying to make sure that all of the realtors that are practicing here know exactly what the law is in the state of Florida in regards to emotional support animals. And that's just one other thing that we have to deal with every day working in real estate.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And the legal hotline is a great resource.
It is a good resource.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of ways that realtors can be proactive and avoid legal issues. Hopefully, we're always avoiding the legal issues. But for example, what are some of the low-hanging fruit areas that realtors should be aware of? Can you show us some tips, share some tips on how they can remain safeguarded when they're out there in the field?
Yes. Low-hanging fruit, I would say something that comes to mind is disclosure issues. Those come up often in real estate transactions. And as you know, under Florida law, real estate licensees are required to disclose known material defects that affect the value of the property.
Yes.
And that's the case even with using an as-is contract. So that's a very important requirement. My advice regarding that would be to, if you're unsure, you can always seek advice from an attorney on your specific situation, but always I like to err on the side of caution and disclose something. So,
of course you do. You're an attorney.
I know, right? Better to disclose than end up in, lengthy and possibly time-consuming litigation.
Absolutely.
Interesting fact for you is, do you know whether a death or a murder that occurs in a house, is that a material defect that you're required to disclose? What do you think?
So my understanding is that it's absolutely not something that affects the value of the property, and it does not need to be disclosed. But I have heard that in other states it does need to be disclosed.
Mm-hmm. That's
not
right.
Here in Florida.
That's right. Yes, that's an interesting one. That always seems to interest people on that. Another one regarding disclosure issues are repairs. I get asked a lot about repairs and whether you have to disclose repairs. And the general rule there is that if you have completely repaired something, then you do not have to disclose it. However, the issue I see a lot of people running into is that a repair may not have been fully fixed or remedied.
Okay.
And in that case, you can get into an issue because then you still have a defect there. So that's
maybe something like mold remediation that wasn't fully remediated.
Yeah, so that's something to be careful of as well.
Okay, fantastic. Good, absolutely good information. What are some great resources for realtors to read or follow for breaking news or to gain insight into protecting their businesses, staying in the know? Are there any blogs, podcasts, or publications that you would recommend for realtors specifically?
Yeah, there's tons of resources out there. You mentioned one earlier, the legal hotline through Florida Realtors is super awesome. I follow the Real Estate Law 360, which is a pretty good resource. It's, very law heavy, but I like it because it focuses on a lot of real estate case law and big decisions coming down in the real estate industry. Another resource is, of course, our Legal Lane. Amazing resource, but I'm not biased at all.
Yeah, right.
It's created by me, and I actually started that Legal Lane page pretty recently. And And you can find that page through our RWorld site. On the members tab, you'll see Legal Lane page. And what I've done there is I post articles periodically on issues that I'm hearing of or issues that I'm seeing people run into. So that's definitely a good resource for you guys to check out. And the last two resources I will say that are really good are NAR and FR's legal articles that they put out as well. NAR has a window to the law. I don't know if you've seen them, but they come out about monthly, and those are pretty cool as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great information on the Florida Realtor site as well. So as far as Legal Lane, is that of something that we can get through the dash, or are we getting that through RWorld.com and clicking on the members tab?
Yes, good question. It's right through our webpage, RWorld.com.
Okay,
so super
fantastic.
easy to get to.
Easy to get to. Okay. Moving on, we've heard a lot about ADA and testers and internet trolls lurking, trying to threaten realtors or brokers. So what are some other areas that realtors should be aware of? Maybe social media or marketing? Any additional thoughts on things like that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Chris, because we are seeing a lot of issues lately regarding social media and marketing in particular. Something that it's really important to keep in mind is that for social media, whatever you're writing on there can be used as evidence against you in a professional standards proceeding. It can be used possibly in a court case. And so it's really important that you keep in mind whatever you're writing, it needs to be truthful, honest. That's also, goes to our code of ethics. We have Article 12, which involves honest and truthful communications. I've also seen a lot of issues come up with defamation involving social media posts. And, if you're posting about someone else or their business, you can have issues with that. Same thing with marketing, keeping in mind that marketing should be honest and truthful so you don't have legal issues as well as issues with the code of ethics.
Right. And things that you post on social media, a lot of people think that it's okay to post on social media because that's my personal page and that's my personal belief. But people forget that they're wearing the realtor hat first at all times. And they need to be careful what they're putting out there. And, you have too many cocktails one night, you throw something on social media and you think you're just going to delete it, when you wake up in the morning, oh God, what did I do? But guess what? Somebody might have screenshotted whatever you put out there already. So that could be in multiple people's hands and could definitely be used against you. So people really, really need to be careful with what they're putting out on social media.
Oh, absolutely. And another thing too that came to mind is copyright issues as well. It's really important to keep in mind that when you're posting things on social media, you need to make sure you have the proper permission to be posting that, whether it's a photo or a video, etc. Make sure that
especially photos.
Yes.
Yeah, big time. Don't steal those listing photos, people.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get on to something fun. I heard that you used to be a college level gymnast. So what will it take to get you to do a backflip in our next board of directors meeting?
Oh, gosh. I don't know about that. I'll have to take that, into consideration, and I'll let you know.
It's a big room. We can get a tumble out of you or something. Come on.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, but that is true. I was, a college gymnast. I was a D1 gymnast. I competed at George Washington University, where I did my undergrad. So yeah, fun times.
All right, awesome. Do you have any awards, trophies, medals?
I do. Yes, I have a few. Actually, my senior year, we won our championship title for gymnastics. So,
awesome.
Yes, I have that. Yeah.
Okay, very cool. Man, you do everything. So we were talking about Realtor Code of Ethics. So when it comes to the Code of Ethics, what are the top 2 violations that you're seeing these days, and how could we really handle those better?
Really good question. So to back up for anybody who's new, the Code of Ethics is what all members are obligated to follow, and it's comprised of 17 articles regarding ethical obligations for realtors.
And every single one of them counts at all times.
Yes, all 17, yes. And so, last year when I was looking at the 2022 year, I did notice that we had over 100 ethics complaints filed, which was quite a lot.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate.
It is, yes. But there was definitely patterns to some articles that were cited more than others. And what I noticed was that the most popular article was Article 1, which was alleged over 49 times.
Okay.
And we have Article 12, which was alleged 33 times.
Wow.
Yes. And so Article 1 gets to protecting and promoting the interests of your client. And that can be pretty broad and it can encompass a lot of activity. So that one is cited often. And, that one is pretty common sense. And, as long as you're maintaining the interests of your client and you're putting that first, you'll usually be okay. So keeping that in mind. Article 1 also covers acting honestly. So, honesty is always so important and upholding integrity as a realtor.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And Article 12 gets to being honest and truthful in your real estate communications, which we spoke a little bit about previously, but we do see a lot of issues with that as well. So again, making sure that you are honest in your advertisements and all of your communications that you're putting out as well. And then also the third highest cited article, which I know you only asked me for two, but I'm going to give you three.
Let's get them.
The third,
to help keep people keep people out of trouble here.
Yes, yeah. The third actually was Article 2, which goes to disclosure of pertinent facts, which we discussed earlier.
Discussed, right?
Yes, but that one is cited often as well.
Disclose.
Yes.
So, are there any? Can you give us some specific examples on when you're talking about being truthful in your communications? Do you have any specific examples of ways that people were, alleged to have been violating Article 12?
Yes, here's a really good one and a popular one we see are questions and issues with modifying photos using AI.
Oh, really?
And changing it.
Okay.
Yes.
We just talked about that up at Florida Realtors. So
Yes.
that's interesting that we're actually seeing this here locally as well.
Yes, yeah, we see a lot of questions regarding that. And so, the best practice there is to make sure that you are disclosing that they were enhanced so people know that, maybe you added a pool or whatnot. And that's, no one can misconstrue that to think that the house actually had a pool. So, going back to disclose.
Yeah, and I've actually seen where people have removed like power lines in photos. They've had them photoshopped out, and that's a big no-no. You can't do things like that. You have to have a true representation of what that backyard looks like. And if you've got a big, power pole and power lines running through the back of the property, you don't want to get rid of those things in your photos. It's not like you're just adding some furniture or changing the color of a wall or something like that in order to virtually stage. I mean, you've got to be careful with how much you really toy with those pictures and adjust them, like you said, using AI, which is becoming so popular now. So
Absolutely.
Definitely disclose. And I always think of that as good practice. I tell my agents, if you are doing virtual staging or anything like that, just put a note in your remarks into the MLS just to say that these photos have been virtually staged. And, don't show a fully renovated home using AI if that's not what the person's about to walk into.
Yes. Yeah, okay. That's good advice.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so what's the best one-liner piece of advice that you can give to realtors? Obviously, trying to keep people out of trouble here.
Okay, the best one-liner I could give would probably have to be get it in writing.
Okay.
And I will say that again, get it in writing. I say that because I think this one may seem like common sense, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen in a professional standards hearing or in a court hearing. I used to be a litigator before I was here, and I've seen so many times people show up to a proceeding and it just ends up being a he said, she said situation where people don't have things in writing and it's really hard to prove. So making sure that you have what you need to protect yourself in writing. If you're disclosing things, put that in writing.
Right.
If you have a phone call, those are great and, work well in a lot of situations, but make sure that you follow up that phone call with an email and something like, hey, just confirming, we spoke about XYZ, something as simple as that. As long as you can get it in writing, that will protect yourself and possibly save you a huge headache down the road.
Big time. Yeah, definitely use that for repairs as well. If you're going to do any kind of negotiating in in a contract, statute of fraud says that in order for it to be enforceable, it must be in writing, correct?
Absolutely.
So
get it in writing.
Get it in writing. Okay. I know that you are incredibly busy, so we are going to wrap this up. But one last thing I wanted to ask you, because I do know you are a native Floridian, correct?
I actually am not.
You're not? Okay. I thought you were. Where are you from?
No, I actually was born in Boston, or outside the city, which is why I don't have that Boston accent that you hear.
Okay.
And so I grew up in Massachusetts. I went to undergrad in DC at George Washington. Then at that point, I decided I had had enough of the cold and that I was going to move to Florida and enjoy that warm weather. And I will never leave Florida. I love it here.
I feel exactly the same way. I came down, I was born in Buffalo, New York. I spent 17 years in Toronto, Canada. And when I lived in Florida when I was a kid, but when I came back here as an adult, I said, I am never going to leave here. I'm not going back to the cold. There's no way.
Yeah, so you understand.
I totally understand. So, okay, so since the time that you've been living in Florida, so this is the last question that I typically ask on each one of these podcast episodes, is tell me about a gem that you have found somewhere in the state of Florida that you absolutely love. Maybe something that we don't know, a place to eat, a place to go and chill. What is one little Florida gem that you could share with everybody who's listening?
That's a good question. A Florida gem.
I mean, there's so much to love. I mean, we've got so many things. A couple of weeks ago, Jessica Lowe was telling us about Blowing Rocks Park up in Jupiter, which my sister goes to all the time. And I've
actually never been there.
Okay. We definitely need to go check that out.
Maybe that will be my new gem once I visit there. Yeah, but I used to live in Delray for a little bit, and I really like the Ave there. There's so many restaurants and shops along there, so I really like going there and walking around. There's a lot to see. Yeah,
Delray is awesome. We do multiple events at Throw Social, which is a really cool spot.
Love that
down
place.
In Delray. Yeah.
Yes.
There's a lot of great brunch spots there as well.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being with us, and I will let you get back to work. And to everyone who's listening, thank you again for tuning in and watching another episode of RWorldTalk.
Thank you for having me.
Bye, everyone.